Okay, welcome to episode 6 of the Extraordinary Living podcast. I am so thrilled to be, on this adventure. Like, it's so great also to have Naomi co-piloting this stuff. It's like sometimes she's in the lead of things, and sometimes I'm in the lead of things. And, we've got a really dynamic, great thing going on. Um, but this one has, gosh, it has so much kind of to do with me. And we all have these insights about what to do and how to move forward. I was talking a lot about this in episode 5, and I'll continue. I mean, I'll probably continue to talk about it a lot, but it's just amazing that if you're trying to get to second base, you don't have to know how to get there. You just have to get off first base. You just got to start and you just got to get going. And um, so anyway, I appreciate anybody watching this. And in this, you know, I'm going to be using my life experience, our life together, as an example of what extraordinary living is to us. We definitely lead by example, and we're on the fringe of um, what some would say is reasonable. But at a certain level of things, it's probably good to trust that the decisions that you're making are right on. It can be easy to be convinced that you're kind of doing everything wrong if everybody else is kind of doing something different. And but Naomi and I have been on the at the edge of things and we do things very differently, as you'll come to observe through the podcast. But we're pretty deep into this now. We're both in our late 50s, mid to late 50s, and things are phenomenal. They're extraordinary. And so um, I am going to continue to provide context and provide examples of the way that we've done things. And I think that there's a fair amount of adventure and knowing yourself, study. Like, there's a lot involved. There's a lot involved in living the extraordinary life. And so I'm going to be sharing examples of what I mean by that at the beginning of all of the podcasts. And so this photograph here is from 2019. I remember a friend of mine, a guy named Moss, that I used to kayak with. Great guy. We learned how to paddle hard whitewater together, kayaking, and we were a pretty good team. I remember one night late, we had paddled some class 5 stretch of the Tuolumne, and he's just like, you know what, I just I just really want to be rich in time off. And I was taken off to go to chiropractic college, and he's like, that's just like, why are you doing that? And I'm like, well, I've been kayaking a ton and I'm just kind of burning out on it, and I want to have things a little bit more dynamic, where I'm not focusing just on this one thing, whitewater, whitewater, whitewater. It's like, and he's like, I just really want to be continuously wealthy and time off. And I'm like, I kind of want to, contribute and make a difference. and stuff. I had learned when I was 15 or 16 well, at least I believed it at the time. I didn't test it out. I hadn't tested it out yet, but my belief was that if you're really, really selfish and you just did what it was that you wanted to do with your time, that you would burn yourself out on yourself, and that what the only thing left over to do is to make a difference in some way, contribute in some way. Me and my friends, we were having these conversations when we're 15, 16 years old, and they became, things to live by. I remember it was very trendy to just, don't watch TV. We've never had a cable subscription, so we've done a lot of, we've lived extraordinary lives, and some of this stuff is really foundational. And so I believe that we're a really good example of living the extraordinary life. But that doesn't mean that the way that my life that's extraordinary is the way that your life needs to be extraordinary. What Naomi wants for her life is a little bit different than what it is that I want for my life. We play different roles, but we're certainly an epically good team. And the things that we choose to do don't necessarily need to match what you do. The extraordinary life experience comes from this deep well of knowing that is you. It's a part of you, but I contend that there's a little bit of a struggle going on between your educated intelligence and your body's wisdom. And people are not very encouraged to listen to their body's wisdom, yet I believe that it speaks very much in truths. And so it's not super supported to be listening to body wisdom, but there are wonderful technologies to be able to help you tap into that and get it, the volume turned up, and to get it to speak more clearly. And so that's the foundational premise of the entire podcast. But it's the extraordinary experience, the magical experience, is going to be different for each individual. Different, we're all different. And so I'm going to be using my life experience of how I define extraordinary and magical. And but I'm a risk taker, and maybe you're more risk adverse, and I just want everybody to really know that that's completely okay. you know it's it's an inwardly defined definition. And so anyway, this photograph was taken in 2019 on a maybe day 5 or 6 of a few week trip. We toured the Southwest, rock climbing in um, Nevada, Arizona, Utah, Southern California. And this is Teo leading a pretty easy but pretty exposed sport route. He's about 50 feet up here, something like that. And so he would have been 14 years old. Okay. Maybe Einstein said that the only thing interfering with my learning is my education. So we're jumping into this educated intelligence conversation. We were alluding to this in episode 5. Your educated intelligence is the programmed intelligence. And as I set up this conversation of educated intelligence and body wisdom, this versus that, I completely acknowledge that they're both incredibly valuable. What I'm attempting to do is not to set up good, bad, right, wrong. What I'm attempting to set up is value for both. And because I believe that educated intelligence is outweighed in culture relative to body wisdom, but the real jewels come from body wisdom. And when you couple the two of them in a dynamic relationship, I believe that's where you're going to, move yourself. You're going to get the most gains. You're going to leverage the most gains. So it can sound like I'm just exclusively bashing on educated intelligence, and that if it sounds like that, that's not my intention. My intention is just to nudge people in the direction of um, understanding what body wisdom is, that it exists if you're not aware that it exists, and then inviting people to utilize some sort of technology to move themselves in that direction. So maybe Albert Einstein said that the only thing that interferes with my learning is my education. Stephen Hawking may have said is that the greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, it's the illusion of knowledge. It's like thinking that you know something, but maybe you don't actually know it. Maybe you're just wrong about it. You're coming from this educated intellectual standpoint that you know something, and it's coming from this educated place that somebody else told you, it was reinforced by culture for so many years that that it's true. Well, what happens if you then discover that what you used to think was true is no longer true? So that's what educated intelligence will have the tendency to do as we discover more and more about the world, and we have deeper and deeper book knowledge. And so I would say, like, a really reasonable example of that was that many people believed that if you take a particular shot, that would protect you from spreading a virus, and you wouldn't be able to, contract it and get sick. And um, even though that was widespread throughout the the world very much, it's like that turned out to just not be true. And you just think about the trauma caused by people adopting that piece of knowledge, and think about the social problems that came from all of that of, this person says this person says that, and it's all a fight, and who's right and who's wrong. It's rampantly an issue in our culture these days. It's like this war going on for who's right and who's wrong, coming from this educated place. And we've got AI on its way showing up that will be embraced as the all knowing thing, right? Whether it's OpenAI or Grok or whatever it happens to be, people are going to turn to this as the ultimate answer. But ask Grok why you love your wife, why you care about your dog, whether it's right or wrong for you to quit your job, whether you should move in this direction with your life or that direction with your life, right? There's in the most important things are not these analytical things that can be deciphered by the educated knowledge of of the whole planet. And so we want to investigate the origins of educated intelligence, of government education. There was a real fight in the early 1900s to stop the government from creating government-backed education. It took many years for the government to convince our culture. This is in the early 1900s, and this was all funded by the industrialists because they have an agenda. And there's this wonderful woman, I can't remember her name, but she wrote this book called The Leipzig Connection. The Leipzig Connection is a great book for the deep dive into Western government education. I believe, I can't remember her name, but she was the education secretary under President Ronald Reagan, and I had caught a video um, that she was in, and she was in her late 80s or early 90s, let's say, when the video was when I was watching the video. So she was pretty old, and but still had that sparkle in her eye and still like doing well. And she just really talked about government education from an incredibly knowledgeable standpoint. So anyway, she's the one that wrote the Leipzig Connection. And so for the deep dive, I would say that that's a really good place, a really good place to start. And so our educated intelligence will lead us in directions. And so just as body wisdom will lead us in directions, and I would say that, kind of like the path between the two is probably the way that you leverage the most advantage to the extraordinary life, if that's the destination. And so, inside of educated intelligence, where you kind of go with it is the supremacy of analysis. That if you can analytically work it through, then that must be what's right. This will have the tendency to make you really controlling, which is very dangerous from a pathology standpoint. Now, when I say something like that, those two don't seem like they should go together. Like a person that becomes controlling will have disease and pathology, or it attracts disease and pathology. So, a lot of what I talk about is philosophy. They're the ways that I live, they're the decisions that I make. And it comes from a deep well of life experience, 25 years of clinical practice, and observing, a lot of practice members. But a lot of the things that I talk about, they don't have like rock solid science behind it. So it's this kind of like work in progress, philosophy, conjecture stuff, but from a clinical perspective, seems to be very accurate. And so, and I like that. I like that. And I like utilizing my practice, myself, my relationship with my children. I like using this stuff as, a research project of what actually works and what doesn't work. And so you um, you don't want to have the standpoint that I'm correct. This is a work in progress, and I'm happy to, when I'm presented with, other data or other ideas and stuff, I'm happy to modulate the way that I think and stuff. I want to be able to talk deeply or at moderate depth about life and how to have an extraordinary life. And this starts to roll together into how you function as a human being and disease and all these kinds of things. And so it can start to seem like healthcare advice, medical advice, and that's not what my intentions are. My intentions are to lay out a deep philosophy of how to live an extraordinary life. And, you know, so a lot of it takes science a long time to catch up with philosophy. That's just a lot of reality there. And so my life experience would say that when people adopt a real supremacy of analysis, that they think that they're going to be able to think their way through everything and they're going to make all of their decisions based on rational deliberation, right? That they'll have the tendency to really control their life experiences. And the more controlling a person becomes, and the more insulated a person becomes from all variabilities, they're insulated. They're insulated from variety and unpredictability. The more they're inviting chaos into their life to throw them out of control so that they can learn and grow, right? That's a deep spiritual concept. It's a beautiful, beautiful concept that if you've done so well in your life that you've got everything handled, life is going to throw you a curveball for you to learn and to grow. And sometimes that extends into disease. That's what I mean by that, you know? And so as people become really good at rationalizing their way through their life and being owned by their own analysis, they control their life experience. They're going to eliminate all they're going to do their best to eliminate all their problems. Yet we know if you are successful in eliminating your problems, it just repopulates. So I always suggest that it's just like enjoy the problems that show up, adopt them as challenges and things to learn and grow from. That's one of the biggest gifts of life are the problems that we encounter. They'll have the tendency to resist emotion. They want to suppress emotion. Energy in motion is emotion. They'll have the tendency to resist that because they'll identify that the expression of emotion can be volatile, it can be spontaneous, it moves them in directions of passion, right? They become uncontrollable, and that can be seen as chaos. And if they're seeing something as chaos, then they start to um, be taken out of control. And so then they resist that. So then they resist intimacy, right? They'll have the tendency to ignore pain. They'll ignore pain and difficulty. They'll act as if it doesn't exist. And a general model will be work now, play later. And so they hit the snooze button on the enjoyable, on the things that they would love to do that are not responsible culturally, right? If you want to take off and go kayaking from when you're 18 years old till you're 24 years old, you can easily be looked at in culture as if you're making a really big mistake. But people that are got a little bit more time under their belt, they could be like, well, that's when you should do it. I mean, you can start kicking ass in college at 25 years old, and by the time you're 35, you could be a medical doctor, you could be an engineer, you could, whatever, who knows what it is. You could own the factory that makes the kayaks, right? So the idea of work now, play later it's a dangerous life philosophy. And so you can see how all of these things, there's an argument pro and con for all of this stuff, and this is how I want it to be, because educated intelligence, body wisdom, these two different aspects of life, they just are mostly out of balance with most people in culture. And so, you know, I love this photo. This is so great. And this work, the clinical work that I've refined or developed, or I don't know, it's what I do, but I teach it. ELAN, it has so much to do with the spine. The spine is the back of your mind. And, you light up the spine and you get clear through your spine. Body wisdom is going to get turned on. You're going to be able to listen to that voice internally better and better. And as I'm setting this up, it's like educated intelligence, body wisdom. You're going to hear me talk, it'll be in a couple months. I've got a lot of stuff to go through before I get there, but I'll cover all of the different intelligences that I'm aware of that seem to me to be the most relevant to discuss. There's 4 or 5 of them, and we'll get there, and they're all very important. But when somebody comes from this place of being inwardly connected, they're going to hear more about what their body is suggesting that they do. It's like Julie is talking with Jill, and Julie goes, I can't believe that I've been smoking cigarettes for 5 years. I know that I've been needing to quit. I know that it's bad for me, but I just couldn't do it. It's like I just didn't want to hear it. It's like, whatever the excuses are, but you've got this inner knowing that you need to be doing something different. You feel it from inside. You need to quit the job. You need to embrace a new path in life. You need to go and do something else. These things come up internally for you. You can tell that long lost friend, you're about to have an experience with them for no known observable data. No observable data set is telling you that you're going to run into Jimmy, you know but all of a sudden you run into Jimmy at the store, right? These are the common human experience, and they're not supported very well. But this is the encouragement because it opens up new pathways in life that are valuable. So inside of the body wisdom philosophy, a person, they lay their supremacy at inward direction, that they're living their life from inside out, and they go inward, and they're paying attention to their inner dialogue, and that inner dialogue is listened to, and they take action with it. They'll have the tendency to adapt more in life experiences. There's just more of a smooth flow inside of it. Like I was mentioning, they'll have the tendency to embrace problems because they recognize that if you cross everything off your to-do list, it's just going to repopulate. So trying to get rid of your to-do list is it's a fool's errand, because it'll just repopulate. So embracing the problems, having a new context to view problems as challenges and things for you to just move through and to learn and grow from, then there's a lot less resistance to them. They'll have the tendency to to take action on the emotion. They'll express the emotion, right? They'll take action with the energy and motion as it moves through them. And so they're willing to embrace that chaos. They're willing to be spontaneous and be passionate and make the joke and laugh and kiss the girl, right? And they'll have the tendency to initiate the intimacy. They initiate the hug. You bump into somebody you haven't seen in a while, you initiate the hug, right? They leave themselves open for the vulnerable exchange. Yeah, because one of the pieces that comes with clarity in the spine and body wisdom is that it gets stronger. And so people learn, for good reason, to not let themselves ever be vulnerable. They get hurt as children. People are mean, parents are mean, siblings are mean, you're mean to yourself, right? And so it's like if this seems to be the situation, it makes sense that you would start to shut this stuff down. And so it just takes a little bit more spine, like a little bit of a stronger spine to stand in the face of leaving yourself open, be vulnerable because you might get rejected, right? You might have the person push you away because there's too many people around and they don't want to hug you and they feel uncomfortable and they say, "Hey, don't hug me." Right? I've had that experience before. And it's like, all right, yeah, it's like, can you take it as a person? Right? So that's what I mean by a stronger spine is the ability to be in, I mean, examples of a strong spine go, there's a litany of things that we can talk about. This one just happens to be with having a strong sense of self, a strong spine in the midst of being vulnerable and being rejected. Do you really get hurt? It's like, is that the situation? Anyway, people embracing their pathway of increasing, body wisdom, they have the tendency to express emotion and to initiate intimacy. They have the tendency to stop before it hurts, that they can tell. They can tell. So, in the adventure running community, in the cycling community, in the climbing communities, in all kinds of areas, the idea, I think we got it from Nike, it's like no pain, no gain, I think that's where it doesn't matter. And it's like, it's just not true. Maybe your body is telling you to back off so that you don't hurt yourself. It's like, are you into prevention? Are you interested in stopping yourself from damaging yourself? Right? There's a million examples of pushing through something and absolutely hurting yourself, you know. But if you can pay attention to the subtle messages of your body, the subtle messages will be, it'll come in the way of, okay, this is starting to get tight. This is not quite working quite well. It's like, okay, inside the dialogue, it's like, am I okay to proceed? It's like, yeah, you're okay to proceed right now. Okay, great. Great. So not time to give up. And it's just, but then the message will get to the place of like, you're pushing this too far and you need to dial this back. And it's like, maybe you're at mile 19 of a marathon, you know? And your body is like, no, you need to stop. Well, maybe, you believe the no pain, no gain. You're going to work through it. You're just going to persist. Okay. Well, these are the people that end up, sure, maybe they finish the race and then they spend 15 weeks rehabbing, you know, their knee, right? Or their ankle, right? These are just realities. And there's a delicate thing because there's this aspect of personal fortitude and strength that, if you get a subtle signal of like, oh, my knee is a little bit achy, it's like, well, do I feel like I can run through it? And it's like, yeah, it feels like I can run through it. This seems okay. All right, okay. And you run through it, right? And so this is not about stopping before it hurts. Doesn't is not like, oh, I feel a little bit of pain. One out of 10, 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10 pain, you know, and it doesn't necessarily mean stop. It's like check in, pay attention. It's like, are you damaging yourself? Are you not damaging yourself? It gets into a subtle nuance. The more connected to your body you are, and the better the dialogue you have, the clearer your nervous system is, the better you're going to be able to have a deep conversation with your body, and your body will be able to speak to you in greater and greater subtlety. And inside of that subtlety, you'll know whether you're damaging yourself or not before it happens. And that's really cool, you know? And it leads to all kinds of life lessons because if you're at mile 19 and you can tell that you're going to really damage that you're going to hurt yourself and you stop, you've got to deal with friends and family, your own disappointment, you did all this training and all this kind of stuff. It's like, okay, well, how strong is your spine? How much are you swayed by other people, right? How much of a self-critic, or are you proud of yourself for, it's like, you know what, my body is a rock star and I'm so proud of it for letting me know before I hurt it. I don't know what's going on. And it's just like, okay, what do I need to refine in my life so that that part of my body is has the structural integrity to be able to allow me to do these things, right? And so Naomi and I use, adventure sports and ultra distance, um, long distance activities to really, help us learn and grow. And it's a wonderful place to learn and grow. There's a ton of growth to be had out of adventure and long distance stuff. And so there's a real nuanced thing as far as like stopping before it hurts, because it's like, okay, well, I'm however many miles into this bike ride, let's say, and it's like 3 more miles and I will have ridden 80 miles, whatever. And you can just tell my body can handle the push through it. It's like, okay, great. And so that's what I'm arguing for, right? I'm not arguing to become a wispy, spineless creature. And then as soon as you feel any discomfort, that you run away from it. And that's why I ranted about that for so long, is because that's not what I'm attempting to invite people into. And, my hope for everybody, coming from the body wisdom standpoint, is that you play while you work, that you would literally do something for. This is a perfect example, making a podcast. Like, I knew that I had to do this, and I didn't freaking want to. It's a lot of freaking effort, and I don't like computers very much, and but it's like I have something to say, right? And I know that I have something to say. And if you're being told by that which is to doggone it, do it, it's like I'll bitch and complain about it, a lot. But that's my pattern. I'll bitch and complain, but I'll do it. And I'm having a blast right now. And I'm working, and I maybe won't make any money from any of these podcasts, right? That's not the intention. The intention is to give and love and serve. That's what matters to me anyway. And then the money is secondary. If the money happens, perfect, perfect. Love it. I'll take it, right? But the main objective is to, be stoked on what it is that you're doing. What is the thing that you can do professionally that you can wrap yourself around, that you don't want to retire, right? This stuff comes from body wisdom. And so that's my argument for the body wisdom side of things. And so here's a little bit of the list, just kind of right next to each other. And this is going to sit on a continuum of like this educated intelligence, body wisdom. And so I'm arguing that we utilize educated intelligence. We're not going to try to annihilate it. Embrace body wisdom, make it your home. Use your educated intelligence and analysis as a super useful servant, you know, totally pay attention to your body wisdom and find how you can dynamically balance these things. And a real trick is like, when you find yourself stressed, what do you do? How do you can you still come from a body-centered place if you're stressed? It's an interesting thing to study. And so anyway, I believe that's the end of our program for today. So thanks for being here, and we'll catch you next Tuesday on the Extraordinary Living podcast.